So in today's gospel lesson, Jesus is on the boat. And that storm comes that's shaking the boat, and he's sitting in the back. He's kind of resting. And the disciples, we heard, were scared. And as I hear this story, I think about this boat that they're journeying through. We're all journeying through the boat of our own life. And I think about what storms we face, whether that's a change in a job, perhaps a pandemic, or a personal illness, an injury, relationship turmoil, perhaps riots and insurrection at the national capital, violence, occupation, insurrection. There are lots of storms that we've faced in just this past year. And in this story that we heard, Jesus seems to his disciples to be doing nothing. Does it ever feel when you're going through some great suffering, some great turmoil, that as much as you pray, as much as you ask God to do something specific, that sometimes you feel like God's not doing anything, things just aren't changing, you're still stuck in the middle of a pandemic, you're still stuck in the middle of suffering? Perhaps we tend to cry out in that time, like the disciples in the story, do you not care that we are perishing? With 600,000 dead from the pandemic in our country, I know there are many families who over this last year have turned to God. Do you not care that we are perishing? Jesus was not acting how they expected in this story. Here they are, turmoil. They're probably trying to get the water out of the boat, and he's there resting. I wonder what they did expect. Did they expect him to be fretting with them? Did they expect him to be throwing out the water with them? They wanted some indication that he cared. They wanted some sign. I think we do too. When we're going through hard times, we want some sign that God cares. We want God to fix things. Maybe we want God just to make it all better. The psalmist, going through his own turmoil, turned to God and said, "Why have you forsaken me?" As he faced his own suffering and was not seeing God responding how he had hoped. Do you not care that we are perishing? I don't think Jesus waving his hand and whispering to the wind and stopping the storm was on their list of what they expected him to do. But that's exactly what he does in this story. Perhaps it was a wave of his hand, perhaps it was just a whisper to the wind, and the storm calmed. Stillness. He acted in this story in an unexpected way, probably not what they expected. And he chose an action that demonstrated two things. There were two things shown in the calming of the storm. The one, he shows them that he cares about them. He shows them that he cares, that they're afraid, that they are anxious, that they are in turmoil, that they are facing this threat. And he shows them that, too, he has the power to help them in the most challenging, scary times. Let's shift back to our boat for a moment, the boat of our life. These storms, these rocky waves, they're part of this journey of life. We have faced storms, especially this past year, on so many levels, personal and national. And we will face more storms. Every one of us in this room, we have and we will face the death of loved ones. We have and we will face again injury or illness. These happen. We will face the unexpected waves that bring fear and anxiety. This happens. This is part of rowing the boat across the choppy sea of life. And when we are prone to crying out, "Do you not care that we are perishing?" in those moments of deep suffering, we're invited to remember this story. A therapist that I worked with for many years reminded me that the waves of life will come. It's inherent. There will be choppy waves that will rock the boat, that will make us fear, that will cause us anxiety. And the question is, are we grounded? Do we have our heart and mind and soul so deeply rooted and so grounded in the good news that when those waves come, they simply wash around us and don't knock us over and bury us? When we are prone to crying out, "Do you not care that we are perishing?" this story reassures us that God is there, and God is and will act in unexpected ways, not necessarily how we think God ought to act in this story. And I invite us to consider this. If Jesus can calm the storm and waves, if he can, by the wave of a hand and whisper, calm these cosmic forces of wind and storm, do you not believe that he has the power to work within the storms of your own life? If he can calm the greatest life-threatening storm that faced these disciples and demonstrated that great power, can he not, in our own lives, be there in our great storms? This story reminds me that there is a force at work in our lives, greater than anything that we can imagine. The power of God is present at all times, working in ways unseen, not how we would expect. But the power of God is present in all places, to all people, at all times. And that power is a power of love, as demonstrated in this story. And it is a love that embraces us, carries us, holds us, sustains us, no matter what we are facing. This power, this love, this force that permeates the entirety of the cosmos is our inheritance as children of God. This is your inheritance. That force and power of love that is pulsing through your veins, that is connecting all of our hearts through the veins of this force of love, binding us together as one, and not just us Christians, us, all of humanity, and all of creation, and all of life. This force demonstrated in this story is your inheritance. Claim it. Hold on to it. Especially in the hardest of times, claim your inheritance. That power is what Jesus called the Holy Spirit. And this breath of God, this Spirit of God within us at all times will guide you, will sustain you. And Jesus told us that that power, that Spirit, will guide us into all truth. And so Jesus asks us, why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?